Hey friends, Justin here. Welcome back to my channel. I am hanging out upstairs in my little chill zone in my office. I've got some smart lights and I said, make me purple. Make me fuchsia. And the reason why is it was my mother's favorite color. That was her go-to. And she never told me this, but you guys know I'm a big film fan. And one day I was watching The Color Purple with Whoopi Goldberg, with Oprah and Danny Glover. And her story, I saw my mother's story in The Color Purple. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about her, and you'll understand why she probably resonated with that old Southern traditional story, But first, let me show you a picture. I've got a picture of her here. And this is my mother. This is Gloria Jean McKinnon. Let's see if we can get a good shot. So you can see she's got the fuchsia, the purple sweater on, and even her lipstick is fuchsia. But she was a lovely person. You can probably see her glow and her smile through the picture. And everyone that she met, she embraced with that same love. When I was born, she actually adopted me. And she was a godmother to so many people. When I was born, there were church members living in our house. When I moved out when I was 19, and there were people living in my bedroom. She was just a caretaker, if that makes sense. And she had a lot of mothering to offer. But yeah, just a wonderful person. She was born August 9th, 1948 in Montgomery, Alabama. Her father's name was Cota, C-O-T-A, Cota McKinnon. Her mother's name was Lula. And that was her real name, Lula. My grandfather was born in 1899. He was a sharecropper. So 2 generations away from me, and I feel like I'm so modern and all of these things. My grandfather was 1 step away from slavery as a sharecropper. And they lived on a dirt road in Montgomery, Alabama. They didn't have indoor plumbing. They had to go out to an outhouse. And it's my theory, I've got an uncle, it's my theory, he never got over that. But my aunt tells me a story about how they had like concessions on the side of the house and sold things to, the black community around them, the neighborhood. I don't know if it was like washing powder and candy and stuff. Because obviously, Montgomery, Alabama, being the epicenter of the civil rights movement, was extremely segregated. My grandfather was a deacon at the same church that Martin Luther King preached at in Montgomery, Alabama. So that was a source of pride and a lot of stories for him growing up. And when my mother was 5 years old, they left Alabama and moved to Detroit, Michigan, where I was born. And so my mother, it was like 1953, 52, 53. Excuse me, I think my mother was 5-ish years old. And they moved to a house on St. Antoine Street in Detroit. A lot of the streets in Detroit have French names. The other street I lived on was Lafayette. That's where our second house was, or apartment. But they lived on St. Antoine and lived with Bernice, my aunt, for a little while. And then my grandfather, by hand, built my family a 4-bedroom house on a street called Homer on the Upper West Side of Detroit. in the 6 Mile and Livernois area. And at the time, it was a really nice neighborhood, you know. But Detroit, I think, has seen, you know, better days. My mother went to junior high at Post Junior High, which is right in the neighborhood where I was born. And so she got the house after my grandfather died, and that yellow house, the 4-bedroom house that my grandfather built with his hands, is the house that I grew up in, that I was, you know, basically born into. And so one of the things that my mother did, one of her first jobs, she was an old school switchboard operator. She would connect calls for a company called Michigan Bell, which is a precursor of an offshoot of AT&T. It eventually became AT&T. But yeah, she was a switchboard operator, and I'm sure that was really, really fun. In the 1970s, she got a job with the state of Michigan, with the Department of Social Services, and she retired. She did that for 27 years, helping families get food stamps, get you know, emergency assistance, utilities, all kinds of things, you know. And she never, you know, talked about any of her cases, but I know for sure she saved lives. You know, Detroit is a cold place in the wintertime, and if you don't have your stuff on, or you don't have a sympathetic person that understands, it can be really challenging. And so I'm really proud of the work that, you know, my mother did there. And she actually retired when she was 59 years old from the state of Michigan. She joined also in the 1970s our church, Sacred Heart Church, and that became her chosen family. She sang in the choir. She cooked food for Sunday morning after church. We would go over to what's called the Activities Building and eat. When I became a teenager, she created something called the Teen Club at our church. And, you know, she did it for me. She did it so that I would have friends and, you know, connections. But she did good things with that group. She took us to restaurants, fine dining, things that these inner city Detroit kids were not going to experience. She took us to Toronto, Canada, and we saw the Lion King in Toronto, 30 years ago. And it was a life-changing trip, you know, for me and for the rest of the kids that went to see a different country, different money, different experiences, to go see the Lion King that was a celebration of African culture in the middle of Canada, you know. It was just such an interesting thing, and it's another feather in her cap that I'm proud of, you know. Another thing I'm super, super proud of. I was a dumb kid. I'm a dumb adult. You know, I was kind of a hippie. I want to go to LA and be cool and do all these things, and I did. But you know, I was flunking out of school and skipping school and just not getting there. As a matter of fact, I think I had already flunked out of one high school. I went to 3 high schools altogether and graduated from an alternative school. But I'm going to tell you what my mother did. She was already over 50 and already about to retire with her pension and benefits and all of those things. And she told me, she says, I'm going to go back to college. I'm going to get my criminal justice degree and try to find a job in the Office of Inspector General. Even though I have a full-time job, even though I have obligations at work, she said, I'm going to show you that there are no excuses and that you can do this. And she was on the honor roll. She was on the dean's list every year. She graduated summa cum laude And in her mid-50s, she graduated from college. And, you know, I couldn't be prouder of her, you know, for those accomplishments. She retired, you know, and there's so many other just wonderful things about her, you know, the relationships that she had, how many friends, you know, she helped and supported. On Christmas, let me just tell you guys, I used to, oh, and I resented it for years. We would wake up and we would have to pile into the car and drive downtown to the Meals on Wheels Center. We loaded up the car and we would go to seniors buildings and hand out, you know, we'd have addresses, a list of places to go. And we would hand out meals to, you know, door to door to shut in folks. And when there was need, my mother would sneak 4 or 5 meals into one address, and she would encourage me. She says, I'm going to stand, you know, this is what I do. I've been doing this for years before you were born. I'm going to step back and you knock on the door by yourself, you know, and I got used to, she was trying to teach me how to be selfless and do these things on my own. But I just resented it because I wanted to go home and play video games. I wanted to call my friends and let's get on the computer and do all these things. But she was dead set on being an amazing parent and an amazing example, you know. She was 59 and a half when she retired from the state of Michigan after 27 years and was honored. But unfortunately, she retired at 59 and a half and she died before she was 60. She was diagnosed with multiple myeloma, a form of blood cancer, and she didn't last long enough for us to even get a formal diagnosis before death. They didn't even offer a proximity. You know, they say, hey, you know, this, you've got 3 months, you got this, you got that. I was living in Houston at the time working for ACS, this company, a Xerox company. As a matter of fact, it's the same company that Matthew Knowles, Beyonce's father, worked for 25, 30 years ago. And we, you know, we almost rubbed shoulders over, you know, with our tenures there. But I was working in a call center down in Houston, and I got a call that I better come home. It was getting pretty serious. And within 3 weeks, she had passed away. And I was 22 years old. I think I had just turned 23 in May. I just turned 23 in May, and my mother had given me a fabulous gift for my 23rd birthday, you know, a couple of months before she died. And I was not ready, you know, to deal with that kind of grief, you know. She was a single parent. She was basically my universe. And yeah, it took me 16 years of grief to be able to sit down and talk about my mother without crying, without getting emotional. But I have wanted for a long time to just talk about her and talk about her memory and, you know, how she was my hero. She really was. And, you know, it blows my mind that my grandfather was born in the 1800s. It blows my mind that my mother was born, you know, on a dirt road. And here I am, you know, complaining I can't get a reservation, you know, at somewhere in Los Angeles. And it just, it really helps me put things in perspective. You know, I am a homeowner with, you know, the latest and the greatest. I've got purple lights over me. And to think about what they made work, you know, is really inspiring. So I hope you enjoyed hearing some things about my mother. She is my hero and a mother to so many people, a godmother to so many people. She was a mother, a sister, and a friend, you know. and my hero. So leave this video a like, share some comments with me. If you have any anecdotes about your own mom that you'd like to share, how she's been a hero in your life, I'd love to hear it. So if you like this video, let me know it and leave a like. And thank you for watching, because it's an honor to talk about my mother and talk about some of the things that she did. And I will catch you guys in my next video. All right, bye-bye.